David Mazzucchelli is not a very prolific comics author. He became very well known as an artist for his work with Frank Miller on Daredevil Born Again in 1986 and Batman Year One in 87. But after that initial phase in mainstream comics, Mazzucchelli dedicated himself to teaching and to exploring more personal ways of producing comics. City of Glass from '94 is a good example of that, and Asterios Polyp, which was published in 2009, is the peak of his artistic efforts. Asterios is a 50-year-old renowned professor of architecture coming out of a divorce and whose apartment gets hit by lightning and burns down. Asterios manages to grab just 3 objects before escaping and finds himself homeless. Plot-wise, this is apparently a very simple story. It's essentially a personal rediscovery, a personal journey with some road trip elements, but it's so much more. It's about love and art and philosophy. It's about modernism and symmetry and mythology, and especially about duality. Mazzucchelli mainly uses artists as characters and art as the main theme, and that provides the perfect context to fully explore the many artistic possibilities of the comics medium. It's a treatise on the narrative resources that are exclusive to comics, or at least better used in comics. A treatise on comics language. It's a work of great visual formality. Nothing is arbitrary, it's all perfectly planned and executed. Visual metaphors abound. Every typical component of the comics medium is masterfully explored and used. Line work and colors, layout, lettering, ballooning, repetition. Everything is in service as a narrative tool. And Mazzucchelli uses a very stylized line and only the 3 basic colors throughout the book: cyan, magenta, yellow, and no black. The darkest tone is a very dark purple. And duality starts right on the cover with this not full-sized jacket and the very contrasting cover underneath. And look at this amazing title logo. Architectural elements highlighted by color to form the words. I find it magnificent. Duality is constantly explored, both visually and in the text. Reason versus emotion, form versus function, love and selfishness, etc. The narrator in Asterios is his born-deaf twin brother, who kind of haunts Asterios throughout his life. Visually, there's an extensive use of yin and yang motifs, of mirror images, even the constant profile view of Asterios, which is almost never broken, is also a reflex of duality and of Asterios' unidimensional arrogance and incompleteness. Color, line work and lettering are all used to define personality traces and emotions. Asterios is very rigid and cold, so he's blue. His wife Anna is sweet and passionate and artistic. She's a sculptor, so she's very often magenta. And her speech balloons are round and almost heart-shaped, while Asterios are square and rigid. Each character not only has a specific type of speech balloon, but also a different font. And then, at some points, characters are also defined by form. Asterios is all geometrical shapes, while Anna is more sketchy, artistic lines. And other characters are depicted in very different forms, styles and shapes, not only appropriate to their subjective perception of the world, but also appropriate in the larger thematic of philosophy and art. And when Asterios and Anna interact more intensively, their shapes and colors mix up, and their surroundings also change as their emotions combine or conflict, as if those were contagious. Let's look at some more examples of extensive use of narrative tools. Here, Anna is trying to tell a story, but gets constantly interrupted by Asterios, and Mazzucchelli shows it so perfectly. He plays a lot with layouts too. Here, they visit a musician who is trying to create a musical piece made of very conflicting and chaotic sounds, a cacophony. And Mazzucchelli visually illustrates cacophony through these intersecting panels, but isolating each character in a panel is also very pertinent in the overall context, as Asterios and his wife are on the verge of divorce. And here, this character, Ursula, she's a very esoteric person, and she's explaining Asterios this astrological theory, which is kind of trippy. And so Mazzucchelli forces us to also go around the trip. There's also some very theatrical elements, and the end, the finale, is very unexpected and smashing, both literally and emotionally. Asterios Polyp is one of those books to read many times, as I'm sure it will always offer back something new. And I would recommend it to someone not very involved with comics, but the more you are familiar with the medium, the more you'll enjoy it, no doubt. Although there's a certain academical and intellectual intention in this work, and a good deal of show-off. It's never pretentious, because it's truly done with great knowledge and sensitivity. It is a masterpiece, and Mazzucchelli, a master architect of comics. Thank you for watching. Mind the comics.